Is Jamie White, and on today's educational video, we will be discussing the business strategy of connecting with small business. Now, as always, I like to start off with suppliertynews.com and signing up for our professional membership. It's only 99 cents the first month, and then after that, $5.99. In addition, if you like these videos, please feel free to like, subscribe, comment on the video, and share with anyone who you may think may be interested in this content. Now, we've talked a lot about various business strategies when it comes to supplier diversity, sustainability, social procurement, things like that. But now I kind of want to go a little bit deeper and discuss the varying or the very specific types of businesses in these strategies. And to start off, I think it makes sense to start with small business, as small business essentially encompasses all of these pieces, whether they're minority owned, women owned, veteran owned, locally sourced businesses, etc. So that's why we're starting with this. Now, before we get too in depth on the connecting with small businesses and what are their benefits, I thought it was appropriate to really start off on what is a small business overall. So as you can see in the first point, a small business is a privately owned company that is defined as small by various government standards, and that's going to be global wide, right? Whatever a government considers to be small, underutilized, things like that, that will be determined or defined as a small business. Now, small businesses can be corporations, partnerships, or sole proprietorship. That's just kind of the structure of it, the corporate structure. And the last point kind of talks about different countries and how they do small business and how they describe what a small business is. According to Wikipedia, small businesses range from 15 employees under the Australian Fair Work Act 2009, 50 employees according to the definition used by the European Union, and fewer than 5,000 employees to qualify for many U.S. small business administration programs. So as you can see, when we're looking at country to country, it's a really difference, really big difference, just kind of how people define what a small business is. Now, we have the definition, but understanding the standard is a little bit trickier, right? So as you can see, first point on this page, there is no set standard for a small business with qualifications that may include employee size, annual revenue, and total assets. As we saw from the last slide, when it comes to country, there are varying differences on what a small business is in terms of the actual qualifications of it. The most widely used measurements when it comes to a small business is employee amount, but again, that is not always the only defining factor of a small business. You can also use things like I said, revenue, assets, things like that. So small business rules. So a couple things I want to note here, and then a couple of additions as well. But for small business rules, small businesses are generally advocated for by a national government entity, such as the Small Business Administration for the United States. These government organizations set the rules and regulations for all small firms operating within the country. Now, this is pretty big. Now, one of the questions that I always get is what is considered small. In particular when I'm talking to different corporations. Now, in those conversations, I immediately refer back to the SBA and what the federal government considers small, because that's really where it starts, right? It's kind of like the minimum wage, where the federal government sets the minimum wage, and then every state kind of goes above that and says, well, we're gonna, instead of I think it's $7.25 maybe, or 15 cents, something like that, or actually might have increased. I know we're increasing over the past couple of years, but we'll just put $10 just as an example, because I don't know it offhand. But if the federal government says $10 is the minimum wage, then the state of Michigan can say, well, $12, and the state of California can say, well, $15, and the state of Texas can say, well, $20, whatever. But you can't go under the 10 minimum wage, and that's what small businesses are as well. If the SBA says you have to have at least 25 employees or below 25 employees for this particular industry, then that is the basis, and then you can't really go above that, but you may be able to say, with our, or excuse me, you can't go below that, but you may also want to include, maybe 50 employees or below when it comes to our state or our cities qualifying for small business. And even with me saying that is a bit unusual. Normally, 99 times out of 100, they're just going to take the SBAs, but there are instances where some people may expand on that. They're looking to include certain types of businesses. Now, looking closer at the SBA, the SBA releases a table of size standards that can be found online in the small business size regulations set forth in the Electronic Code of Federal Regulations. So what does that mean? The SBA determines small business by their North American Industry Classification System. Now, this is very key and this is important. The North American Industry Classification System, or NAICS Code, sets the standard for each and every industry in America. This is a 6-digit code where it covers things from strawberry farms to dog and cat food manufacturing to investment banking to construction to energy companies. So it covers the entire gambit. And no matter what company you are going to fall under one of these 6-digit NAICS codes. So whichever one you fall under, that will be what determines if you are a small business or not. You may fall under multiple ones if you are a small business, which gets really interesting, because if you do, then you may be a small business in certain industries, but you may be a large business in certain other industries. And I've actually seen this a number of times where you've got companies making 40, 50 million that are considered a small business, or 40, 50 million, and they have 5 different NAICS codes, and they're actually considered a small business in one of their 5 NAICS codes. So by definition, they are a small business, which gets pretty interesting. But as you can see, just a couple examples of what I'm talking about here. So a strawberry farm is considered small if annual receipts fall under 1 million. Now, when you look at a dog and cat food manufacturing, a small business is if they have under 1,000 employees. So as you can see right there, one industry, one NAICS code defines a small business based on total receipts, while the next one bases it off of employees. In another example, an investment bank is considered small if total receipts are under 41.5 million. So as you can see, there's a really big difference, 1 million in strawberry farms versus 41.5 million in investment banking. So we're really dealing with a case-by-case basis. And that needs to be understood. Now, next up, certifying small businesses. Now, this really plays a part in when we were talking about supplier diversity and how you can certify, or how do you know that somebody is a minority-owned business, for example. With this one, it's the same thing. How do you know if someone is a small business? There's a couple ways to do this. Small business is a little bit more free-flowing, whereas like minority, women-owned, veteran-owned, there's third-party organizations that certify that. Small business, there's not as much. And when I say certifying and verifying, is when you're dealing with these minority-owned, women-owned, veteran-owned, disabled-owned, or certifying organizations. I mean, these are people who will come to your office and check to make sure that you are a woman-owned business and that the woman has the majority ownership and whatnot, is running that organization. Small business is not as in-depth, if you will. So there are different certifications. For example, you can self-certify as a small business. Just simply, input your revenue that you've been getting over the past couple of years. Worked it out with your accountant and whatnot, and figure out what that is, and then you can input that into different certifying bodies, usually city, state types of organizations, and then you're a small business. Other pieces are local government that can do that. Regional industry organizations such as like utilities in California has something along those lines that you can register for a small business for. And then the federal government, right? Now, there are a ton of different programs for small businesses within the federal government that small businesses can qualify for. I've listed a couple here: 8A, Business Development Program. There's also 7A, Hub Zone, Women-Owned Small Business, Service Disabled, Veteran-Owned Small Business, small disadvantage. There's, and on and on and on. But the key here when it comes to these type of certifications is you do have to reach out to the SBA, and you do have to go through a process in order to meet these qualifications, and then become certified. These certifications I listed below are actually really good. I'm surprised I didn't also include the fact that if you qualify for one of these federal government certifications, you can also qualify for federal business bid opportunities. So the government actually has mandates where they have to spend, a certain amount, 5%, 10%, 3% with small businesses in different categories such as 8A, HubZone, etc. So if you are able to become certified within these programs, you will get an opportunity to win those opportunities, to win those bidding opportunities. Now, they're not easy to get through. Generally speaking, from my experience, you do have to, it's a network. You do have to know someone that can help you walk you through the process and then get, win the certification. But if you are able to win that certification, I have heard that it's a huge boon to your revenues for sure. Now, government mandates, we kind of went through that. Okay, so I put on this piece in terms of these government mandates and what they are. So we kind of went through this, but the federal government does this. But, cities and states can also have mandates where they, acknowledge that they want to spend 10% with small businesses as well. And they might, and then they track that and then publish if they've hit those goals. Okay, now how does small business work with various types of entities? So the first one we're going to talk about is private corporations, and then we're going to talk about public. Or actually, we did just talk about public, which was the cities and states, so I apologize. But now we're going to talk about the private corporations and kind of how they do that. Now, while private corporations do not have set-asides or mandates, they can have programs where they track the goal through purchasing when it comes to small business. So, whenever you hear the term like, quotas, for example, quotas can legally only be put in place when it comes to like the federal government, right? Because quotas are essentially mandates that are saying you have to spend with, at least 3% with this type of company, for example. Corporations, you can't do that, whether that's a small business or whatever. That would be discrimination. But what you can do is you can put goals in place that says we would like to spend at least 5% with small business. And I listed here the types of programs you can put in place if you're looking to spend dollars with small businesses. It's just a couple, but first piece is obviously just have a small business program and have someone over that and tracking those results. Next up is sustainability, which we've been through before. If you want to know anything more about that, definitely check out the sustainability video, as well as the supplier diversity video, where we go in depth on those types of programs. And then, anchor missions, which is relatively new compared to the other ones, but we'll probably have a video on that pretty soon as well. But essentially, anchor missions is more so for, the term anchor comes from the fact that you're dealing with organizations that are anchored into a community. So, for example, like a hospital or a university where they're not going to go anywhere. So, yeah, there's different programs around that. Small businesses, and then, more as well that you can have as a corporation. Or, as a corporation. Now, what are the advantages and disadvantages of small business and doing business with a small business? Now, the advantages here is that, you're dealing with a flexible and innovative and largely innovative type of company. When I say innovative, they're able to implement different strategies quicker. I've heard the example that I've always heard is, small business is like a speedboat versus a large corporation is kind of like a huge, cruise ship, if you will. In terms of turning, a speedboat can turn very quickly versus, cruise ship. It's going to take a little bit more time. And that's where it comes to the flexibility and innovative strategies that small businesses can use. So that is definitely a benefit. And number two, provide a premium service in areas large firms cannot, and at a lower cost. So if you're dealing with a business that's locally sourced, they can obviously provide a lower cost because they're right there, so they don't have to, drive 30, 40, 50 miles to do it. And they also, may also be charging lower because for them, $500,000, for example, is a lot of money to pay their 10 employees versus a large corporation where 500,000 is just not enough to pay their 1,000 employees that they have within the state that it could be doing. So premium service at a lower cost for a small business, it's definitely another advantage. Driving competition on the price and service level between the company's existing and potential vendors. So this is just, even if you have a small business in place and you're looking for other potential vendors, looking at other small businesses can also help increase that competition to ensure that your current supply base is performing adequately. Because competition does help, and it does breed better business in these instances. And then better equipped to implement services or products that are risky but can push the industry forward. So this really goes back to the flexibility point, but just kind of goes another step further, which is while it may seem risky, just these different types of innovative ideas that small business may want to implement and can implement first, because for them, as we all know, it's sink or swim. So if they hit on these types of quote unquote riskier investments, it could take them from 100,000 to 10 million, which is a lot for that company versus a large company who, if they're already making $1 billion, then it just doesn't make sense for them to take these types of risks. And when I say risk, I'm talking about things such as like maybe they want to implement a more energy efficient, I don't know, light bulb or car or something along those lines. So maybe investing in newer technology, testing that out and seeing if it works. It could benefit them and then obviously make them a lot of money. And even when I'm saying this, like this happens tons and tons of times, you just may not really have heard of this, where small businesses are actually the ones that are creating these new technologies, and then a large company will just simply buy them up and then implement that strategy or that technology into their corporation, which will make them, give them an advantage 5-10 years from now. So a lot of the, these technologies that that you're seeing now were started by small businesses that were taking those risks. Next up, what are the disadvantages of doing business with small business? Now, the first one is most small businesses fail, right? I think that's the most obvious one. Within 5 years, there is a high probability that business that you're currently purchasing from may not be there. Unless they are able to get multiple customers, they may be struggling for a while. So that is a risk. Next up, this is more controversial, I guess, than a disadvantage, but the definition of a small business changes per industry. So there are, from time to time, especially when it comes to government contracting, there are some pushback when people see the fact that, for an investment bank, as an example, you're spending $500,000 with a company that's already making $30 million, right? Some people may feel that that's not fair when it comes to other small businesses that are making, $500,000 to $1 million. So definitely controversy there, more so controversy than disadvantage. And lastly, the small business may not have the experience or resources to take on a project. Obviously a huge disadvantage. If you do business with a large company, we were assuming, we're all going to safely assume that they know what they're doing, they got the experience, versus a small business that may not have that. Doesn't mean they're not going to do a good job, but they just may not have it. Now, lastly, I just wanted to give a profile, 2018 small business profile from the SBA, just so you kind of know the overall industry, what's out there, if you're curious. Now, as of 2018, there are 30.2 million small businesses in the United States. This makes up about 99% of businesses. So, whether you're aware or not, you're probably doing business with a small business, or you're supporting it in some way, just simply because they make up the bulk of businesses. 58.9 million, or 47% of people, work for small businesses in the United States, so almost half, and 8 million are minority-owned businesses. And then in 2012, women made up 9.9 million small businesses. I think that's at about 12 to 13 million now, but I wasn't able to get any official number on that. But yep, so this is kind of the breakdown. About half of the people work for small businesses, and as you can see, a large part of them are women-owned or minority-owned. Lastly, of the 30.2 million small businesses, about 24 million, or 80%, are non-employer firms. Only 620,000, or 2%, have between 21 and 500 employees. So it's very rare that you'll get a business over 21 employees. But if you are a small business that has, over that, you are in the top 2% of small business in America. So congratulations. But that really just kind of shows you just how small we're dealing with. A large portion of them have no employees, but the ones that do have about 20 employees or less. So it's very interesting. But everyone has to start somewhere, and when they start, they're looking to grow. So there are advantages to doing business with a 5-10 employee person business. You just have to make sure that you're doing business with those that can handle your needs. If you are curious just about the different NAICS codes and the size and revenue or receipts, total receipts that make up a small business, definitely check out this link that I've listed here. I'll also include it in the description below as well. But yeah, you can go in there, play around with it. If you're in the industry, specific industry, and you're looking to do business with a small firm, check it out to see what qualifies. Now, with that being said, if you made it this far in the video, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. If you're looking to connect with us in the future, my contact information is on the screen. Make sure you follow us on the social media on the page. Actually, I have to update these because we now have more, which is pretty good, and I really appreciate that. We are on Twitter, Facebook, Medium, and LinkedIn. Definitely check those out when you have the time. And then lastly, here are just the additional links that will also be included in the description below as well. So before you go, make sure you click that like button, comment, share with all your friends and family, and thank you so much for your time.